Is the Ruben Amorim era at Manchester United heading to an end? That is the question we are going to answer today on the Football Insider. Please let me know what you think about Man United start of the season in the comments, but let's dive into the main part of the video. So Manchester United fell to a crippling 3-1 defeat at the hands of Brentford yesterday. And the questions around Ruben Amorim, his future and what he is doing at Man United are getting louder and louder and more severe. And Man United could well be forced into making a switch in that position if they want to, have a better season than what they had last season. Because it feels like right now, Man United are doing the same things we saw from them last season. They are still struggling in games where you'd expect them to do better. They still have issues with the tactical system. They still have issues with physicality. And we're going to dive into it in this video and really look at the issues plaguing United at the moment. So to the start of the season, Man United have had an okay sort of run. They've won 2 games, both at home against Chelsea and Burnley. Both of them games had an air of controversy around them. The Burnley game, Man United got a really late penalty. They went, 2-1 up. It came to 2-2. Burnley were really fighting them. A late penalty, which was controversial at the time, whether or not it was in or outside the box. They win the game, though, and they beat Burnley 3-2. They also beat Chelsea. Chelsea were down to 10 men early in the game. They went 2-0 up, and then Man United went down to 10 men. They were able to see the game out. They lost against Arsenal, which was pretty unlucky earlier this season, but they were beaten comfortably against Man City a couple of weeks ago. And then, of course, lost to a really poor Brentford team. They also drew at Fulham as well, sandwiched in the middle of that. So it's been a middling start of the season. Look, nothing outrageously good. And until the Brentford game, nothing outrageously bad, but I think the Brentford game really highlighted a lot of key issues at Manchester United right now. And you look at what they've done, and the main concern with United is that they have looked to address that front line. Bringing in Sesko and Mbeumo and Cunha felt like a real chance for Man United to build themselves something in the image of what Ruben Amorim wants his front three to look like. But the defence is the massive issue. The defence in the midfield have got major problems because Brentford, when you watch that game, were bullying Man United physically. They got their goals from getting in behind that defence quickly. They got their goals from bullying the defence and being aggressive. And Man United struggle with that. They really struggle with the aerial balls coming over the top. That defensive line they have is so high up that any sort of pace looks like a threat. And look, De Ligt and Harry Maguire are not the quickest players. So putting them in a position where they're having to play such a high line feels like a recipe for disaster. And we see this play out over and over again at Man United, that these things are happening. But the manager is committed to playing in this way. He wants his team being high up the pitch and winning the ball high up the pitch. But the problem is they are susceptible to that. And if they had quicker players and quicker defenders to deal with those threats, then it would make more sense. But you look at the way that team's constructed right now, they don't look like a team that should be playing a really high defensive line. They look like a team that should be playing sort of a mid-block and just trying to make sure they aren't caught in behind, because that's where they keep getting in trouble. All the time with Man United, you just see them getting done on the wings, people getting in behind, and, getting balls in the box, forwards getting in on one-on-one chances, and that happens all the time with Man United, and they just don't seem to learn. And Amorim has had pretty much coming up a full season in charge, and we aren't seeing progress. He's trying to play this system, this 3-4-3, 3-4-2-1 system, and there is no wiggle room with that. It is continually the same things, and we've been talking ever since he's come in about the same problems, but the manager is so committed to that system that it just feels like there's no chance of him moving that. Why hasn't he, went to 4 at the back at times if it suits for certain games? Why hasn't he thought about trying to, get 3 in that central midfield? Because the central midfield is a big problem at Man United. Look at it yesterday. It was Ugarte and Bruno Fernandes. You're asking them to do a lot when most teams are lined up with 3 central midfielders in the Premier League, and Man United aren't getting the benefit from having 3 at the back. It doesn't feel like they're gaining from that because those defenders aren't jumping into the midfield to create a 3. You aren't seeing the wing backs tuck into the midfield and make that area more compact. What we're seeing is generally Casemiro, Ugarte, Fernandes, Manu, whoever it is that they've got lined up in there, almost being left on an island to try and control that middle of the park, and it isn't working, and it's plain for anyone to see who watches Man United that it just hasn't worked enough. There is times where it's looked good, but generally it isn't, and the manager looks like somebody who doesn't have a plan B, and that is a massive concern. They don't seem to have the flexibility within, the manager's thinking to change things around, try and get, a different system in there to try and the opposition knows what Man United are going to do because they've seen it for a year and he's never really deviated from it. So that is something that is a major area of concern, and is certainly one of the reasons why Amorim looks like, he is potentially coming onto the chopping block. And look, you can look at the money they spent this summer. They spent an absolute fortune, but they still haven't addressed issues elsewhere in the team. They need a proper Rolls-Royce central midfielder. They still need a very, very quick centre-back. We talked about that. They still haven't really addressed the goalkeeping issue. Yes, they have brought a new goalkeeper in, but it's still Bayinda who's in there right now. And look, you can look at him, he made a couple of good saves yesterday, but the third goal he conceded yesterday I thought was pretty poor, to be honest. I even thought for the second goal that he could have done better with it. Thiago kind of hits it at him and it sort of squirms under him. Yes, that forward area was an area of concern they needed to address. They spent so much on forwards in the past. Højlund, Xerxes, spring to mind as just two players that they've bought in the last couple of years that cost a lot of money. They've spent so much money on that forward area, and that hasn't clicked yet for Manchester United, and we haven't seen it click yet so far really this season. And look, we should look ahead really for Man United, because literally this weekend I think they are playing one of the teams that is a nightmare for them, because Sunderland have started the season in red hot form. They look good, they look strong, but they are a newly promoted team, and with that comes the expectation that Man United, playing a newly promoted team at home, a team that won the playoffs last season, finished fourth, finished on like 76 points in the Championship, are coming to Old Trafford, and Man United should win the game. And on paper, they should win the game, and everything points to the fact that Man United should be winning the game. But the issue is that Sunderland play in such a way that is almost perfect for going against Man United's weaknesses. What do Man United struggle with? Well, they're not great on set pieces. They're not great with physicality defensively. They don't like teams sitting in a low block against them. And they don't like teams counter-attacking. Well, Sunderland tick all them boxes. Sunderland are very competitive in set pieces. They are so strong at set pieces. They are so strong on the counter-attack. They've got such really quick players in there. They have three central midfielders, so you can have three central midfielders lined up against that Man United too, so they could dominate that area of the field. They are so well organised, and they've got a manager that has a way of playing that has them in games and makes them so difficult to break down. And they can hurt Man United on the counter-attack and turning them over. If it's long balls, look at Sunderland's forward line and how quick it is. Look at Wilson Isidore, who is one of the quickest players in the league. He's going to be lining up against that Man United defence, and Sunderland will get chances. If they are defensively organised, they will get chances on the break. And that is a big issue, because this game is must-win for Man United. Like, this is one of the most crucial games that Amorim's probably had since being a Man United manager, because if they don't win this game, and heaven forbid they get beaten this game, then the alarm bells that are already very loud are going to become deafening at Old Trafford. People won't accept Man United not getting wins from this sort of game, and it would show that, Sunderland have just come up. They have recruited 13 or 14 players, and if you watch Sunderland this season or watch Man United this season, bear in mind Sunderland are a newly promoted team, you would probably pick a lot of them Sunderland players to go in that Man United team. I mean, that's ludicrous to say, but that's the reality of the situation. If Man United go against Sunderland at the weekend and dispatch them, win comfortably, the noise will quieten down. But if Sunderland go there and hurt Man United and get something from the game, then I think the noise at Old Trafford will be so much that it'll be very, very difficult for the ownership there to ignore. So what's my verdict on this? And look, when Amorim came into Manchester United, I was expecting big things, but to me, he looks like a coach that's stuck in his own ways. He's not learning from his mistakes. He is married to a system that isn't working. He is inflexible as a manager. And why isn't he willing to try a new system to get results? Because a manager's job is to get results. And it feels to me like he is so married to that way of playing, that 3-4-3, that it is hurting him, and it's also hurting Manchester United at the same time. Another bad result against Sunderland, I think, could well be the nail in the coffin there. And I think that Amorim and his time at Old Trafford will be characterised as almost a failed experiment. He's been so committed to playing that 3-4-3 formation, and it just has not worked. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments about Manchester United and their situation this season, and whether or not Ruben Amorim could be facing the sack, even if they get a result against Sunderland, a positive result. How long does he have to continue in this role? Because it really still feels like Man United are struggling and are really gasping for air. under Ruben Amorim to try and get their season up and running and trying to get themselves competing at the top end of the league table, because there is nothing I've seen from this Man United team so far this season to suggest that they're anything more than a lower mid-table Premier League team. And for Manchester United and the money they've spent, that is clearly not good enough. But thanks for watching this video. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this content, and please let me know what you think of Ruben Amorim and his start at Old Trafford. We'll catch you for another video very soon.